Can I ask you something? What are you becoming? Not who you were before the hurt, not who does your family want you to be, not who does society expect you to become, and not even who you think you should be. Who are you consciously becoming? Because I think somewhere along the way, we become so busy understanding our past that we forget to create our future. We spend years asking, why did this happen to me? Why did I become this way? Why can't I go back to who I was? And those questions, they matter. But at some time, another question has to enter the conversation. Okay, now what? The person you were versus the person you're becoming. I've been thinking about how often we romanticize our old selves. We say things like, I just want to be the person I was before everything happened, before the heartbreak, before the betrayal, before the disappointment, before the responsibilities, before we became so guarded, before we stopped trusting people. But here's something I have started to understand. You don't necessarily need to go back. Maybe that version of you served a purpose. Maybe she was innocent. Maybe she was trusting. Maybe she was carefree. Maybe she didn't know what you know now. And that's okay. You don't have to destroy who you have become just because you miss who you were. And you don't have to return to your old self to heal. Maybe you just have to grow forward. When experiences become identities, think about how easily an experience becomes an identity. Someone betrays you, and suddenly you're the person who can't trust. Someone leaves, and you are the person who is afraid of abandonment. You fail at something, and you become a failure. You spend years taking care of everyone, and suddenly you are the strong one. And after a while, you stop saying, "This happened to me." Rather, you start saying, "This is who I am." And there's a huge difference between those two sentences. Because experiences can shape us, but they don't have to become our identity. You can have been betrayed without becoming a person who distrusts everyone. You can have been rejected without becoming someone who constantly seeks approval. You can have made mistakes without becoming someone who believes they have fundamentally broken. Your story can explain you without defining you. The expectations we inherit, and then we add another layer to it, expectations. We inherit so many ideas about who we are supposed to become. You should have a certain career. You should be married by a certain age. You should have children. You should be financially successful. You should be settled. You should be happy. And you should be strong. You should you should have figured out everything. And sometimes we spend our entire lives climbing a ladder only to realize that we were never the ones who chose where the ladder was placed. We just inherited this direction. We inherited from our parents, from our culture, from our relationships, from social media, from people around us. And sometimes even the version of ourselves we created 10 years ago. So, maybe growing isn't about adding something to your life. Sometimes it's about asking, do I even want this? Who would you be without expectations? Imagine for a moment that nobody expects anything from you, not your parents, not your partner, not your friends, no society, no Instagram. No one is watching and no one is judging you. At the same time, no one is applauding either. What would you choose? What would your life look like? How would you spend your mornings? What kind of relationships would you have? What would you stop tolerating? What would you start doing? What would you finally admit that you want? That's a difficult question because sometimes we don't actually know what we want. We only know what we have been taught to want. And discovering yourself means separating the two. Becoming isn't one big decision. And I don't think becoming yourself happens in one dramatic moment. It's usually much quieter. It's a day you say no when when you would normally would say yes. It's a day you stop explaining yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you. It's a day you choose rest without feeling guilty. It's a day you pursue something because you want it, not because it looks impressive. It's a day you realize I don't actually want to live like this anymore. And then you make one small change and another and another. That's how identity changes. It doesn't change overnight, but through repeated choices. What qualities do you want to embody? So instead of asking, what do I want to achieve? Maybe ask, who do I want to be while I am achieving it? Because you can become successful and still be miserable. So perhaps the most important question isn't, what do I want my life to look like? It's, how do I want to feel inside the life I am building? Do you want to become someone who's peaceful, courageous, compassionate, disciplined, free, curious, honest, present, loving? What is it? And then ask yourself, what would that version of me do today? Not someday, but today. You don't need to become someone else. And perhaps this is the most important part of this conversation. There's so much pressure around self improvement, fix yourself, heal yourself, transform yourself, become your highest self, become the best version of yourself. And sometimes even healing becomes another performance, another thing we are failing at. But maybe you don't need to become a completely different person. Maybe maybe you just need to become more yourself, more honest, aware, more intentional, more connected to what matters to you. Maybe the goal isn't to create a perfect version of yourself. Maybe it's to stop abandoning yourself. The uncomfortable question here is, so I want to leave you with this question, with this uncomfortable question, and I genuinely want you to sit with it. And as I always say, don't answer it immediately. Not give it a socially acceptable answer. Just sit with it. If nobody was expecting anything from you, who would you choose to become? And I ask this question again and again. Then ask yourself another question: are the choices I'm making today taking me closer to the person or further away? Because your past may have shaped the person you are today. But it doesn't have to write the rest of the story. You still get to choose. You get to change. You get to outgrow identities. You get to disappoint expectations. You get to start again. You get to become someone your younger self couldn't even imagine. And maybe that's what this next part of life is going to be about. not going backwards, not trying to recover an older version of yourself, but growing forward, becoming one choice at a time, one boundary at a time, one honest conversation at a time, one brave decision at a time. Until one day you look at yourself and realize, I didn't become who everyone wanted me to be. I became someone I can finally recognize. And maybe that's enough. This was conversation 23 on silence between coffee. I will see you in the next conversation. Until then, take gentle care of yourself.